Final Fantasy holds a special place in my gaming memory. I'm a sucker for the JRPG genre, but Final Fantasy especially, with their fantastical worlds, long, slowly unraveling stories, the charismatic cast of characters, and the strategic gameplay. My experience with the franchise mostly centers around Final Fantasy X, 13, and 14, but never 7. On February the 29th, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth releases. It's the second part in the remake of the classic Final Fantasy VII in 1997. What better reason to look back at the first part, Final Fantasy VII Remake. Let me know what your greatest memories are from Final Fantasy VII, or any other Final Fantasy game for that matter. Let's get into it. In Final Fantasy VII, you're introduced to the city of Midgard, a complicated city, structure-wise to say the least. The upper plate of the city is quite literally where the middle and upper class live. Beneath the upper plate, we have of course the poor people, living in the slums. The world building is a standout in any Final Fantasy game. Because JRPGs take you on a road trip adventure, it's important for the world to feel big. It has to make sense with its own identity. Final Fantasy VII most definitely does that. In my first 8 hours, the game has shown some amazing vistas over the grand city of Midgard. The city goes for a very tech-heavy look and feel, with mechs and stormtrooper-like guards, who, by the way, also have very stormtrooper aim as well.
Light him up!
I guess that's how he deals with bullets. I'm guessing these guys have the same accuracy as stormtroopers.
At the same time, it goes with some early 20th century vibes like 1920 or something, judging by the cars or even the suburbs that look like New York. The upper plate is divided into 8 pizza slices. Each slice has its own reactor that powers the main pillar at the core of Midgard. What powers it? Mako. Mako is the lifeblood of the planet where they live on. Mako powers the city, but at the same time the city drains the planet, which brings us to the premise of the story. Enter Cloud, our main character. Just looking at his haircut, you know he's our main character. Not just Cloud, by the way. If any character is introduced with wacky hair, you can be sure it's a recurring character at the very least. Cloud is a merc for hire. He's very serious, dark and gloomy. No sense of humor, but somehow all the ladies love him. I guess that bad boy attitude works in Final Fantasy as well. Cloud is hired by Avalanche, a environmental ecologist extremist group that doesn't like that the city drains the planet dry of Mako, its lifeblood. I guess you could compare Avalanche to environmental activists in real life, but instead of taping themselves to the road or ruining historical paintings, Avalanche bombs the reactors powering the main pillar in Midgard. I wonder who the Greta Thunberg is of Avalanche.
How dare you!
Anyways, Avalanche adds to our main cast. Barrett, the loud giant dude with an attitude and a Gatling gun as an arm. How security guards don't pick this guy out of a crowd is beyond me, but sure. Biggs and Wedge, classics who are in every Final Fantasy game. Jessie, the girl next door who happens to be a bomb expert. And last but definitely not least, Tifa, one of the most cosplayed video game characters in gaming history, and you can kinda see why. Jessie or Tifa? I don't know if Cloud will ever make a choice, but choosing is losing with these options. Now I know this is just the beginning of the story. More characters will be introduced and the story will be much more complicated than it seems, for sure. Shinra seems like the bad guys for now, a corporate overlord that controls Midgard. You also have Sephiroth, looming large with a connection to Cloud. Clearly, the story has just begun.
Our beloved planet is dying. Slowly, silently, painfully. Can you bear to see the planet suffer? Cloud.
The combat of Final Fantasy comes with certain expectation, just like the world. Final Fantasy VII from 1997, much like most Final Fantasy games for that matter, have had turn-based combat. A very static combat, which has its charm for sure, but was in need of a modern update. Final Fantasy VII Remake does just that by combining the turn-based combat with a very fast-paced dynamic combat at its core. You can still pause, or rather slow the fight, to select your attacks, but the fight is still happening around you, making the fights much more urgent and exciting. It adds an extra dimension, where you have to be aware of your surroundings at all times. Where are your party members and enemies positioned towards you? It's a great choice because, let's be real, however great the original was, the combat from that time doesn't translate that well in this day and age. The mixed reviews of Final Fantasy XIII and XV prove that. This modern take on the combat invites a whole new audience to Final Fantasy without alienating the fans that love the original combat. The attacks itself are very much what you can expect from a Final Fantasy game. The elemental attacks like Fire and their respective upgrades, Fira and Firaga, Barrier, Cure, Raise, they're all there. Of course the summons like Ifrit are present to truly lift this game up to a blockbuster game with impressive visuals.
Get him!
Upgrading weapons and armor are also true to the Final Fantasy franchise. Materia, crits, bangles, all the classics. Finally, to really justify splitting this game up in 3 pieces, each at a $80 or Euro price tag, they had to give us side content to keep us busy. It's the one feature that in my first 8 hours feels somewhat lackful. The side quests are definitely there, but seem rather straightforward. Chadley gives research assignments where you have to perform specific actions during combat. Sure, why not? Weimer sets you on bounties for special mounters. Alright, it feels like busy work tasks without much depth. It might be more fleshed out deeper into the game, but right now I don't really see the point besides completionism. Now, I know, I'm only 8 hours in and this game received great acclaim when it launched initially. For the biggest part, you can already see why. It keeps its identity from its 1997 original and what made it great. At the same time, it gave it a much needed upgrade. Not just visually, which is obvious, but also the combat. I fully plan on enjoying this game from start to finish. And whenever I do cross that finish line, I'll be back with my final thoughts on Final Fantasy VII Remake. Until then.